What's up, everyone? Welcome back. My name is Derek. Today is June 11th of 2023. The topic of today's video will be the Champions League final that took place yesterday between Man City and Inter Milan. The game was won by Manchester City, coupled with Man City's Premier League victory and their win in the FA Cup final last week. They have completed the rare treble, which is what it's called when you win all three: domestic tournament, domestic league, and the Continental Cup. So this was a big deal for Manchester City, as it was also their first Champions League victory in the history of their franchise. In this video, we'll be talking about the synchronicity and numerology that links this event to the death of Unabomber Ted Kaczynski, who reportedly passed away from suicide just several hours before the game. Now, on this channel, we talk about the language of numerology, which works through dates on the calendar, but also through the language that we speak. On the screen here, you'll see the most simple Gematria cipher called ordinal, where the alphabet is numbered 1 through 26. The base 4 methods either reverse or reduce the alphabetic order to produce a new palette of numbers. And when you compare this to dates on the calendar, you find that something very strange is happening in this world. Now, what makes this so intriguing? The fact that the Unabomber died on the date of Manchester City's greatest accomplishment. Well, you may recall that back in 2017, Manchester was the site of a major domestic terror bombing when, after an Ariana Grande concert, a bomb exploded in the concourse, allegedly killing 22 people and injuring over 1,000. Now, there's a lot of talk about this incident and what it really was. That's not going to be the topic of this video. What I do want to point out is that the Manchester Arena bombing happened on May 22nd of 2017. And May 22nd stands out because that is also the birthday of Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. When you look at the history of the Unabomber's incidents, we find that he sent a bomb to the president of United Airlines back on June 10th of 1980. And June 10th was the date that Manchester City completed their treble this weekend. The fact that this bomb was aimed at the president of United Airlines also stands out because Manchester City is sponsored by an airline, Etihad Airways, and their chief rival is Manchester United, whom they defeated for the FA Cup last weekend. Something else that stands out about this is that the Unabomber's first name is Ted. Here in the United States, on Apple TV, there's currently a television series called Ted Lasso, which is about a fictional team that plays in the English Premier League, the same league as Manchester City. In fact, in September of 2021, Ted Lasso had an episode called Man City, which featured a cameo by the coach of the team. This episode aired on September 10th, which was the eve of the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. So in this video, we'll explain how this event, Man City's treble, connects to not only the Manchester City bombing, but also the attacks of 9/11 back in the year 2001. So again, the Manchester Arena bombing was at an Ariana Grande concert. And when you measure from Ariana Grande's birthday to the date of Man City's treble and the death of the Unabomber, you find that she was 10,942 days old. In numerology, zeros get dropped in the result. So this represents 1942, which was the year that the Unabomber was born. In order to get through to win the Champions League, Man City had to defeat Inter Milan, who has a Croatian midfielder named Marcelo Brozovic. And what's so strange about Marcelo Brozovic is that in 2021, he appeared in a match against Bologna in Italy with a new tattoo on his neck. And this tattoo happens to be of a bomb. And the media was really confused by this. But we see this often, right? Athletes getting very bizarre tattoos. And as we come to find out, these are connected to significant events that they're involved in. Before I talk about Brozovic, I want to point out the strong connection with the number 23 that occurred yesterday. Of course, this is the Champions League that concluded in the year 23. And with their victory, Manchester City became the 23rd different team to win the Champions League. They even did so on a date with numerology of 23. 6 plus 10 plus 2 plus 2 plus 3. Using the standard alphabetic order, when you write out the number 23, it has a Gematria value of 163. This is the same value as Manchester City, also yielding a 163. Manchester City is based in Manchester, England, which also sums to 163. In the ancient Latin method of Gematria, which I consider to be the most significant cipher in this study, notice how Manchester City citizens also sums to 1630. Citizens being the club's nickname. And in order to win yesterday, they had to beat Inter Milan, who is more commonly referred to as Internazionale, which also sums to 163. This all happened the same day that Ted Kaczynski reportedly committed suicide. And in Latin Gematria, Kaczynski equals 1063. 163 is also a prime number, the 38th prime. The name Kaczynski also sums to 38 in reduction. So let's talk about this guy, Marcelo Brozovic, who, again, a defensive midfielder for Inter Milan, and one of the men that Man City had to get the ball past in order to score their only goal yesterday. This tattoo was first debuted by Brozovic on April 3rd of 2021. And this is confirmed by this news article by Football Italia that he unveiled this tattoo again in a game against Bologna. And again, this game on April 3rd of 2021. So April 3rd is when he first shows this bomb tattoo. Yesterday's Champions League final fell exactly 43 years to the day after the Unabomber sent a bomb to Percy Wood, the executive of United Airlines, on June 10th of 1980. In the standard reduction method, Manchester equals 43. 43, like April 3rd, 4/3, which was the date of this game where he debuted the tattoo. His last name, Brozovic, sums to 43 in reverse reduction. Now, the number 43 and the date 4/3 is actually significant to the Unabomber. When the Unabomber was arrested, it was on April 3rd of 1996. So on the anniversary of the Unabomber's arrest is when this guy shows up with the bomb tattoo. He did so in the year 2021, which represents the digits 221. The Unabomber was arrested at his cabin in Lincoln, Montana. In the reverse alphabetic order, Lincoln, Montana sums to 221. Measuring from the date of the Manchester Arena bombing to the date that Manchester City completed its epic treble was 2,210 days. Again, reflecting the Unabomber's hometown and the year that this bomb tattoo was first shown to the world. So let's talk again about this show, Ted Lasso. Again, a series about the English Premier League, which had an episode called Man City. Ted Lasso debuted on Apple TV on August 14th of 2020. If you measure from that date to yesterday's Championship League final, you get 1,031 days. The Manchester Arena bombing occurred at 10:31 p.m., which has the same four digits as 1,031. But let's take a closer look at this debut date for Ted Lasso, the 14th of August. In England, this date is written 14/8. Using the standard alphabetic order, the Unabomber's name, Ted Kaczynski, equals 148. And when Marcelo Brozovic first debuted his new bomb tattoo on the anniversary of the Unabomber's arrest, he was 1,480 weeks old. The Man City episode of Ted Lasso aired on September 10th. Now, again, this was the eve of 9/11, but this date represents 910, or 91. 91 is the ordinal value of Unabomber, 91. So is it really just this television series that's scripted, or are these writers dabbling in more than they'd like people to believe? So again, Man City, right? The eve of the 20th anniversary of 9/11. If you measure from that episode to the date that Man City won the Champions League, you get 91 weeks and 1 day, which has the same digits found in 9/11. Marcelo Brozovic, notice how his birthday is November 16th. And this produces digits that look very similar to 9/11. Think about how today, the 11th of June, is an upside-down 9/11. He was even born on a date with numerology of 119. This brings us back to the Unabomber, whose last name is Kaczynski. The name Kaczynski equals 119 in ordinal. The man he bombed on June 10th, the same date that Man City won the Champions League, his name was Percy Wood. And remarkably, the name Percy Wood also sums to 119. The Manchester Arena bombing occurred during a concert for Ariana Grande Butera. Notice how Ariana's full name equals 119. Also, the head coach of Manchester City, Pep Guardiola, his full name with his nickname, also summing to 119. Ariana Grande was born 1,190 months after Man City was founded. Manchester City dating all the way back to 1894. But what's really crazy is that when you measure from the Percy Wood bomb to the date of the 9/11 attacks, you find that he was bombed exactly 1,109 weeks before the 11th of September in 2001. And now we're being told that the Unabomber committed suicide, which also equals 119. Next, I want to look at the name Brozovic, the man with the bomb tattoo. Notice how this guy wears number 11 for Inter Milan. The first plane that struck the World Trade Center was Flight 11, or maybe it was 175. Flight 11 might have been the second one. But either way, this number 11, right? Destroyed on the 11th, New York, the 11th state, the Twin Towers in the shape of an 11. In the alphabetic order, the last name Brozovic sums to 110, which represents the number 11. But there's more to this. The World Trade Center, the original World Trade Center, was 110 stories tall, both towers. In fact, the North Tower also had a 110-meter antenna. They were built by Rockefeller, which sums to 110. They were destroyed by Osama bin Laden, which equals 110, on the date 9/11, which equals 110. Again, all syncing up with the name Brozovic. What about the reverse alphabetic order? Here we find that the name Brozovic equals 106, and this was the next extremely important number to Man City's treble. Think about yesterday's date. The Champions League final was held on the 10th of June, or 10/6, like the number 106. The city of Manchester is located at 53 degrees north and 2 degrees west. If you multiply 53 times 2, you get a product of 106. Manchester City was founded on April 16th, which is the 106th day on the Gregorian calendar. And in the alphabetic order, Manchester sums to 106. Manchester City Citizens equals 106. Their coach's name, 106. Champions League final matches the World Trade Center, both 106 in reverse reduction. The winning goal for Manchester City was scored by a player named Rodri, who wears number 16. And again, with the 0 dropped, 106 is 16. So let's take another look at the head coach of Man City. With the S exception, his name sums to 106. This method, identical to full reduction, but the S is worth 10. And this is because S is the 19th letter. 1 plus 9 is 10. You just reduce it once. In the alphabetic order, Guardiola's full name sums to 223, and this number has been all the rage this year. Of course, we're currently in the year 2023. Guardiola was a span of 223 days before his birthday for his team's championship. The winning goal was scored by Rodri. The name Rodri equals 223. And this brings us back to the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, whose May 22nd birthday is the date that leaves 223 days in the year. Once again, May 22nd, the same date as the Manchester Arena bombing, also leaving 223 days in the year. Now, the Manchester Arena, for 13 years, was owned by Manchester Evening News. And notice how in Latin Gematria, Manchester Evening News also has this 223. In fact, to this day, a lot of people still call it the MEN, which stands for that. Brozovic, the guy with the bomb tattoo, was born a span of 223 days before Ariana Grande, whose concert the bombing was at. 223 is another prime number, the 48th prime number. Not only was Marcelo Brozovic born on a date with 48 numerology, but when he debuted his bomb tattoo, it was also on a date with 48 numerology. And that date was also exactly 48 years to the day after the opening of the original World Trade Center. The World Trade Center opened on April 4th of 1973. So if you include the end date, his bomb tattoo was exactly 48 years after the opening of that tower. Now, in one of my recent videos, I mentioned how April 3rd, 1973 was the date of the first cell phone call. It was made just one day before the opening of the World Trade Center, and it happened in New York. And again, the World Trade Center had those antenna on it, the communications antenna, which allowed for cell phone calls. The Manchester Arena bombing on the Unabomber's birthday, this was his 75th birthday. And I don't have this in the post, but 75 was a number that popped up a few times. The winning goal was scored by Rodri Hernandez, whose name sums to 75. Ted Lasso is played by Jason Sudeikis, who was born in the year 75. And the name Jason Sudeikis sums to 75 with the S exception. But if you look again at this date, the Unabomber was exactly 900 months old for the Manchester Arena bombing. 900 is the Latin value of Internazionale, which was the name of Inter Milan, the team that Man City defeated. Man City was founded in Gorton, United Kingdom, which sums to 900 as well. The coach of Man City, Pep Guardiola, is currently 52 years old. Using the S exception, Manchester equals 52. The Unabomber equals 52. This game was on the anniversary of the Percy Wood bombing. Percy Wood equals 52. Kaczynski equals 52. The winning goal was scored in minute 68, which equals 52. And not only was the head coach 52 years old, but he was also 143 days after his birthday. Now, why is 143 so significant? Well, notice how Man City was originally founded 143 years ago. The chief sponsor of Man City is Etihad Airways. Etihad Airways equals 143. Rodri, who scored the game-winning goal, was born on a date with numerology of 143. He scored his goal in the 68th minute, which equals 143. Gorton, Manchester United Kingdom, also 143. Before I go on, I just want to point out that Jason Sudeikis also equals 156 in ordinal. And the 156th prime number is 911. And think about how all of these 9/11 riddles with Ted Lasso. So Brozovic has a lot of tattoos, right? It's not just this bomb tattoo, which everyone thinks is so weird. But this guy's got a ton of tats. And I thought this one was really, really interesting. So he has a tattoo of the birth date and time for one of his daughters. So you see the date, April 19th of 2017. Now, 2017, again, this was the year of the Manchester Arena bombing. In fact, his daughter was born 33 days before that bombing. But let's look closer at the clock. It says 2:15. Again, his daughter born at 2:15 on the clock. He plays for the club Internazionale, which sums to 215 in reverse. But what really stood out is that this is a number that's very important to Manchester City. Manchester City has double Gematria of 215. Manchester, England, 215 with caps. The Man City Citizens equals 215. And their primary sponsor is the Etihad Aviation Group, which equals 215 in ordinal. So how interesting that this guy has that number right there on his arm as well. Measuring from the Man City episode of Ted Lasso to Man City's treble victory was exactly 21 months. And the 21st prime number is 73. And look at how the number 73 connects to Manchester City as well. Manchester City, Manchester City FC, Manchester, England, Man City Citizens, Manchester Arena, Etihad, Internazionale, 68th, the minute they scored, all 73 in Gematria. So this brings us to Rodri. He was the hero for Manchester City yesterday, scoring in the 68th minute. Let's also first appreciate his birthday, the 22nd of June. Now, internationally, this date is written 22/6. The World Trade Center was not just brought down in 2001, but it was also bombed in the year 93, which is the same year that Ariana Grande was born. Notice how this bombing occurred on 2/26. And in the United States, we write that date as 2/26. So the World Trade Center bombing date, you could technically say that's found in Rodri's birthday. The name Rodrigo, as it appears on his jersey, sums to 103 in the reverse alphabetic order. When Brozovic first showed his bomb tattoo, Percy Wood would have been 100 years and 300 days old. Man City won the treble 3 days after Percy Wood would have turned 103 years old. 103 is the full name gematria of the Unabomber. Theodore John Kaczynski, 103. Marcelo Brozovic was born 103 days before the World Trade Center bombing. Again, that's the guy with the bomb on his neck. 103 days is also 3 months, 11 days. Theodore John Kaczynski also with the 311 in reverse. This brings us to yet another significant number. 311 is the 64th prime number. The Manchester Arena bombing occurred on a date with primary numerology of 64, and in reduction, both Manchester Arena and Manchester City equals 64. 64, a number we know is connected to the kill code as well. This brings us to Rodri. The name Rodri sums to 64 in the alphabetic order. He scored in the 68th minute under the guidance of coach Pep Guardiola. And notice how 68 and Pep Guardiola both equal 64. Oh, there's so many connections. Let's jump to this one. The name Brozovic, Inter Milan's player, sums to 219 with capital letters. Rodri Hernandez sums to 219, and he signed with Man City in the year 2019. His birthday falls 219 days after Brozovic. And when he scored the game winner, it was exactly 21 years and 9 months after the 9/11 attacks. And notice how the number 219 has the same gematria as the World Trade Center. Also, 219 has the same gematria as Etihad Airways and Manchester City Citizens. And notice how this number is 1608. 1608. Now this 608 is like 68. And this is another number I've been talking about recently. World Trade Center construction first began in the year 68. And it started on the 6th of August, or 6/8. This was the same year that President George W. Bush, who was in office at the time of the 9/11 attacks, graduated Yale. 68 was the year that 2001, A Space Odyssey came out. So Rodri scored his goal in the 68th minute. And notice how the game fell 68 days after the anniversary of Unabomber's arrest and Brozovic's bomb tattoo. The 68th prime number is 337, which connects to World Trade Center, 1,337. Also, 68 sums to 1,028, and this is Manchester City's 128th season of organized football, like Manchester City citizens. So this is the point of the video where I feel like I'm just bludgeoning a dead horse, because I know you guys kind of get it, but there's always more, right? Just always. If you measure from the World Trade Center bombing in 1993 to the 9/11 attacks, you get 3,119 days. Now, in that number, we get 311 and 119. And we just talked about how Theodore John Kaczynski, which is not a fun name to type, has the 311. And then Kaczynski on its own has the 119. Well, 3,119 is the 444th prime number. And the Unabomber lived in Lincoln, Montana, which equals 444. Manchester City was founded in Gorton, England, which equals 444. And the Unabomber bombed an airplane during his crime spree. And notice how it was flight 444 that he bombed. I think that about does it. I think there's plenty to cover in this, but one of the more obvious, I guess you would call this a ritual. I mean, who the hell gets a bomb tattooed on their neck like this? All right, everyone, that'll do it for this video. Please feel free to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Also, if you check the links in the description, you'll find blog posts that helped make this video possible, as well as links to support the work. So thanks to everybody who jumped in. Peace, love, God bless, and we'll talk to you next time. See ya.